Parallax, factory ammo, barrel cooling, and more this week on Mail Call Mondays. I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Well, we're back on our regular format now. We've got a bunch of questions to answer for you, so let's roll right on into them. Our first question comes from Timothy. Timothy asks, I know this is a pretty noob question, but could you explain how to do unknown distance shooting, corrections on a scope, and how to make corrections, etc.? Well, Timothy, the ability to make quick corrections when you have a miss is one of the things that really separates field shooters from regular target shooters where you have a target carriage and a guy downrange marking targets for you. Our conditions change very quickly when we're shooting long range in the field. We don't have wind flags to go off of, so really one of the best indicators of how to correct your shot and get back on target is the splash, or where that previous shot impacted. So the first step in that is getting a stable position so that you're going to actually be able to watch the bullet impact downrange. This isn't really as much a big deal at 800 to 1,000 yards because the time of flight is long enough that if recoil pushes you off target a little bit, you can get back on quickly and then watch that shot impact. This is one of those instances where the highest magnification your scope offers may not be the best bet because it may delay you getting back on target. Now, once you've got back on target, you've placed your crosshairs on the target and you see that splash, that shot impact, that kick up of the dirt, or if you're working on some kind of background, seeing the actual bullet impact on that background, you should be able to look through your reticle and measure the distance horizontally and the distance vertically that the shot missed from the target. This is where I really recommend mil-mil reticles, or at least matching reticle and turrets. The thing is, when you see that impact, you want to be able to measure it with your reticle and then quickly either go up and dial it on your turrets or just quickly shift over and hold to bring that impact back on target. Now, if you're using a mil reticle and mil turrets, then let's say you see the impact through the reticle of your scope and it's half a mil to the left and half a mil down. Well, you're going to jump up on your turrets, you're going to dial half a mil up and half a mil right, and then fire again. Generally what I will do, especially at long range shooting, is I'll just shift and I'll hold to get that bullet on target because I don't want to waste any time coming off of the scope and looking at my adjustments and dialing. I don't really want to take any time to break my position at all. I just want to shift and send another one. If you guys watched the video that we shot this last week shooting the Ma 10 project at Rock Castle Shooting Center, we were shooting that at 1,000 yards. We were using 168 grain Black Hills Gold ammo, which is shooting 168 grain AMAX. And I was having a little bit of trouble getting it on target because that ammo was dropping subsonic right about where the target was, and we had a little bit of wind downrange. So what I was doing, it's hard to tell from the video because you're just watching me pull the trigger again. I'm not breaking my position at all. Every time I would have an impact, I would watch the impact through the scope and I would shift the reticle over on the target to account for that deviation between the point of aim and the point of impact, and I would fire again. Because it was just a very small deviation, I was just working with between the center and the left edge of the target. The rounds kept impacting off the left edge, so I was changing the reticle to try to get back on target. That really is the best way, in my opinion, to do it, is just to shift your reticle back and forth and use holds to try to get that round on target. And that works whether you're working with a mixed mil reticle and MOA turrets or a mil reticle and mil turrets. Now, the big benefit of the mil turrets is when you're done, when you found that correct deviation, especially with your elevation, then you can come off, you can dial it in, you can write it down, you know that's what the correct dope is for that shot. If you're working with mixed a mil reticle and MOA turrets, then what you're going to have to do is measure it with the reticle. You're going to have to apply a conversion factor and then hope your math is right when you dial it in and then write it down. And I just prefer to work with simpler units. I don't like to have to use math and convert. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of idea, and hopefully I didn't confuse you with that detailed answer. Our next question comes from Dayton. He asks, Parallax, trust the knob or your eyes? I keep hearing that one pop up again and again. Well, I always recommend trust your eyes. The knobs on the Parallax, they're marked. Some of them are marked with just dots, some of them are marked with just lines. Some of them actually have yard lines or meter lines marked on them. But usually those are just a rough idea. That will change depending upon your magnification, depending upon your diopter settings, etc. So what you need to do, what I do at least, is I'll use those numbers as a guide. If I have a target at 500 yards that I want to engage and my Parallax turret is marked in yardage, then I'll spin it to that 500 real quick, but then I'll get down behind it and I'll move my head around a little bit left to right, up to down without bumping the stock, and I'll see if that reticle moves in relation to the target any. If it does, then I'll tweak the Parallax setting just a little bit, forward or back, until it no longer moves, until it appears that that crosshair is pinned onto the target. When you have that condition, that is parallax free. I'm not looking for the focus on the target. Focus is a little bit different. I'm looking to see that the reticle and the target are in the same focal plane, that they're stuck together, they're not moving in relation to one another. That's where you want to be. There are instances in a lot of scopes where you can be in focus but not parallax free, or you can be parallax free but not perfectly in focus. If you're given the two options, you want to be parallax free, and the target only needs to be clear enough for you to actually see it. So don't worry about getting that razor sharp image and still have parallax in the system. When you are doing field shooting and you're shooting multiple targets at multiple ranges, then try to pick a parallax setting that is about 1/3 of the total distance you're going to shoot. That's about my rule of thumb. That way you still have further targets, 1/3 to 1/2. Sometimes I'll do 1/2. But the further targets will be closer to being parallax free than the close targets. The way parallax works, or the way it ends up working on rifle scopes, is that closer targets will tend to have more parallax than more distant targets based on what your setting is. So if you set it at 800, you're not going to have a problem engaging that 1,000-yard target, but you may have a problem engaging that 200-yard target. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the number of targets that you have to engage. That's also why I like the adjustable objective. Adjustable objective seems to have a little deeper field where that parallax is not an issue than side focus. But most scopes are going to side focus now, or the side parallax adjustment, so sometimes that's all you're stuck with. Charles asks, what is the most accurate factory ammo one can get for 308? For us that can't reload currently, I buy Southwest Ammo, 175 Sierra Match King loads. Well, Charles, some of that is going to depend upon your rifle, but some broad recommendations I can give for you is Black Hills Ammo. I've shot both their 168 grain gold load and their 175 grain load, and they are both very accurate. The 168 gold, amazingly enough, performs very well in everything from 1 in 12 twist 308s to 1 in 10 twist 308s. So it has a really broad range. This is what we were shooting when we were at Rock Castle shooting the Ma 10, but the problem we had with that was with the 16-inch barrel, the ammo just could not push that bullet fast enough to get out there. Now when I put this ammo in a 20-inch barrel or higher, it works great. The 168 AMAX that they use in this load isn't really greatly suited to 1,000-yard shooting. There are better bullets out there like the 175 grain Match King or 178 grain AMAX, but it works for 800 and in. It's a good choice. The old standby is Federal Gold Medal Match. This is the 168 grain gold medal match, which again, this is really an 800 yard and in cartridge. This was my duty ammo for a while as a SWAT sniper, and it's very, very accurate, and it will get the job done. But when you get out to 1,000 yards, even shooting through a 26-inch barrel, the stuff starts to keyhole. It starts to impact the target sideways because the 168 grain bullet doesn't like to go transonic. When it goes through that transonic barrier, it starts to tumble, and you'll actually see the bullet slamming into the target sideways. Federal does make a 175 grain gold medal match. That is a very good 1,000-yard shooting round. Another one that is out there is the Hornady ammunition. This is the Hornady match. It's the 178 grain Superformance ammo. I have had mixed results with this ammo. It is very accurate, but it is running the ragged edge of pressure. If you've got a bolt gun and it likes this stuff, then this is a great 1,000-yard cartridge because the powder they use, it's running as fast as you're going to get away with in factory ammunition, and it's shooting the 178 grain Hornady boat tail hollow point, which is my preferred long distance 308 bullet. So this is some good stuff. The unfortunate thing is Hornady has announced that for this year they will no longer be producing the 178 grain boat tail hollow point. They will still be producing the 178 grain AMAX, but my favorite bullet will no longer be produced for the remainder of this year due to the ammunition crunch and Hornady trying to crank out as much of their popular products as they can. So we'll have to see if the Superformance goes through a little bit of a redo on what bullet they're using, or if this just gets put on hold for the remainder of the year. But match loads from Black Hills, Federal, and Hornady will all do very well for you. Now, I have not used the 175 grain Southwest ammo load. I've shot Southwest ammo before at demos, but I really haven't had a chance to sit down and shoot it for any kind of accuracy testing. So I can't comment on that. I have heard that it is fairly good ammo, but I don't have any first-hand experience on it. So if it's working in your rifle though, keep on with it. The 175 grain Sierra Match King is a very good bullet for long range shooting out to 1,000 yards. You just have to match your load when you're able to reload for that bullet for your rifle. But if you're getting the kind of performance you want out of that cartridge, stick with it. Next question is from Wade. Wade asks, I'm currently PCS'd for tech school and can't have a rifle to practice with. Are there any resources, books, software, unconventional training, etc. that you would recommend? Well, Wade, if you cannot take a rifle with you, then it's kind of difficult to do any dry fire training or any static training that we do away from the range. But if you want to keep your mind occupied and just kind of stay in the shooting mindset, then there's a great piece of software out there called Shooter Ready, and it is a long-range shooting simulator that requires you to put in dope and do wind calculations and all that fun stuff. And it's a really fun game. It's no replacement for actually shooting, but it's great if you're stuck behind a desk. And it is shooterready.com is where you can go to get the software. It's kind of a web-based software, so it should work on Mac and PC. I've used it on PC quite a bit. I haven't got it loaded onto the Mac yet, so I can't tell you how well it will work on there, but I anticipate, because it's a web-based interface, that it should work just fine. We will leave a link down below in the description to where you can go to check that out. They used to have free demos on there. They may still have the free demo on it. I haven't checked it today, but you can go on, download, play a couple stages, and see if it's something that you like. Again, it's not perfect. I have the Shooter Ready 2 version, and it didn't have the ability for me to load in my own ballistics for my rifles and my cartridges, which is what I would really want. But it has its own cartridges, its own rifles and stuff in there that you can select from to get something that's kind of close to what you shoot and use it in different field environments. So go ahead and check that out if you're stuck behind a desk. Just don't let your boss catch you playing it when you're supposed to be working. Mike asks, when shooting a grouping exercise, how long does it take for your barrel to cool back down to where overheating won't affect accuracy? Well, Mike, it's going to depend greatly upon the rifle, the kind of barrel, and the profile of the barrel, and also, of course, your ambient temperatures. What I generally like to tell guys is if you're shooting for peak accuracy, you want your barrel to stay no more than warm to the touch. If it is getting so warm that it's uncomfortable for you to wrap your hand around it and hold the barrel, then you probably need to take a break and let it cool down. This is really not a concern with the heavyweight tactical barrels that we shoot when you're trying for peak accuracy, because you're not going to want to sit down and shoot a string of 20 or 30 rounds. You want to get behind the rifle, you'll want to relax, you'll want to fire 5 nice, easy, controlled shots, and then stop and get up off the rifle and relax. And if you try to maintain your concentration for more than that, then you're going to start slinging shots. So it's really, if you take your time, you make sure you maintain your peak concentration, then the rifle will cool on its own. Now, don't let it sit out in the sun. Don't start cranking shots through it really quickly, because we're not so much worried about the accuracy at that point as we're worried about blowtorch in the throat of that chamber. Shooting high strings of fire very fast just keeps heating that metal up right at the beginning of your rifling, and you'll get heat checkering. You'll just basically wear that throat out a whole lot quicker. So your barrel will last longer if you give it a little bit of time to cool down and you don't needlessly throw rounds down range. Now, I've been asked time and time again, how fast do I shoot? Well, I shoot fast enough to get the job done. So if the job is to engage 10 targets as quickly as I can engage them, I'm not worried about barrel cooling, I'm not worried about barrel life, I'm worried about slinging bullets down range as fast as I can accurately fire the rifle. And we'll replace the barrel when the barrel needs to be replaced. Now, if you are sitting down and testing something, like very frequently we go to the range and test equipment, then I use a very slow pace, because that way I'm using my peak accuracy and I'm getting the most out of the rifle and allowing that barrel to last as long as possible. Now, 308s, with 308s you have a very long barrel life, so unless you're really doing something crazy, you're not blowtorching the barrel like you would with the 243. With the 243, I'm very cognizant of how quickly I'm shooting it, because that barrel has a very limited life to begin with. I don't want to shorten it any more than necessary. So while you're shooting, if you have any question, lay your hand on the barrel. If it feels too hot to you, slow down, let it cool off. If you can't hold your hand on it, it's probably too hot. If you don't need to shoot fast, don't shoot fast. If you need to shoot fast, then shoot fast and replace the barrel when necessary. Cameron had a question about the SVD Dragunov. Dragunov SVD, is it a good alternative for a semi-auto precision rifle? Well, Cameron, in my opinion, no, it's not. The only reason to have a Dragunov is because you want a Dragunov. First of all, a lot of the rifles that are out there on the market listed as Dragunovs are not in fact Dragunovs. They're actually PSLs, which is a little bit different. I'm not going to go into all of the details because I'm not a Dragunov or PSL expert. I have looked at them though, because I have shot Dragunovs overseas. The Dragunov really was not intended to be a precision rifle from its birth. From its birth, it's an infantry or an armored support rifle. It's really designed to be used in conjunction with other forces to give them a little bit of reach and a little bit more precision. But it's not designed to be used in the same role that American sniper rifles are used in. Now, I've seen guys that have taken Dragunovs and they've cleaned them up and they've tuned them a little bit, and then they've loaded match ammunition for them, and they've gotten fairly repeatable accuracy out of them. But when you look at the cost, the expense, the time it takes, and the effort that you have to put into it to get that rifle to perform to the level of a precision rifle, you would have been much better off just going out and buying one of the AR-based semi-automatic rifles, or even a match-tuned M1A. Match-tuned M1As are not my first choice for a precision rifle, but you can get into one of those cheaper and with a higher degree of accuracy than you can through a Dragunov. Dragunovs are very expensive rifles because of what they are, not because what they can do. So I would not recommend a Dragunov as a precision rifle. Most of the off-the-shelf Remington 700s that you can get in the big box stores will outshoot a Dragunov as far as accuracy goes. So really it's not a good idea to look at those. Now if you want a Dragunov because it was the Soviet premier sniper rifle, then get one. I would love to have one to hang on my wall, but I can't justify paying the prices that they're asking for Dragunovs just to hang one on my wall when I have plenty of other rifles in the safe that will outperform that rifle. Sean asks, what method do you use to determine seating depth in your hand loads? Well, Sean, we covered this a little bit in our reloading series, so make sure you go back and check that out if you have not already. The main guide that I use is magazine length. Almost every single one of the rifles that I shoot are repeaters. That means that I really don't want to single load each cartridge. So if it's longer than magazine length, it doesn't help me out very much. Remington rifles will generally, if you're trying to set your seating depth to be just off the lands, which is what a lot of guys are doing, they're doing what's called chasing the lands. They're trying to keep the bullet just off the land so there's a minimum amount of jump before the bullet hits the rifling. If you are chasing the lands in a Remington 700, you're going to be so long that there is no way that cartridge is going to fit in either the internal box magazine or an AICS-based magazine. So it's not even worth trying to do that. Load them to magazine length and roll. Select a bullet that will jump the gap without problems, like the Sierra Match Kings and the Hornady AMAX and Bowtail Hollow Points. They both take the jump very well. When you start getting into more VLD shaped bullets, they don't like jumping as much as the Match King type bullets. So bear that in mind. Now with semi-automatic rifles, again, you are generally going to have a considerable amount of jump. Part of that is due to the reliability, part of it is due to the limitations of the box magazine. Now Sean, one rifle that I have that I cannot seat to mag length is the 243 barrel on our Accuracy International AE Mark II. It's a Krieger barrel. It was chambered for 243 specifically with the 107 grain Match King or 115 grain DTAC. With that barrel, if I set the bullets to the book length or to mag length, then I cannot actually chamber a cartridge. The bolt will not go forward enough to lock down. So what we did there is I went ahead and made up a dummy cartridge, seated the bullet long, I placed it in the chamber, I pushed the bolt forward to hold the bolt as far closed as it could. I then took a cleaning rod and ran it down the barrel and measured or put a mark on the cleaning rod denoting the distance. I then ejected the cartridge. I run the cleaning rod all the way in until it contacts the bolt face on a closed bolt and make that mark, and then I measure the two marks. Those two marks there will tell you what the overall length of that specific dummy cartridge can be with the bullet just touching the lands. So we take that, we set the cartridge length, I'll use my seating die and seat the bullet until that cartridge is at that length specifically. I'll take my bullet comparator, I'll measure its length, and then I'll adjust the seating die so we go in about 2/1000ths more. So I've got 2/1000ths clearance between the bullet and the lands. This way I'm not jamming the bullet into the lands. It doesn't cause any problems if I need to extract a live cartridge. I don't run the risk of pulling that bullet out of my cartridge case. And then I'll use that as my seating depth. So now the bullet is seated as close to the lands as I can get and still have reliable performance. That's the method that I use. There are a bunch of different methods out there. Again, check out our reloading series because I'm fairly certain I covered that in detail in our reloading series. So make sure you check that out. Roy asks, spin drift. I've heard to account for it at longer distances and heard others say they don't bother because of other environmentals. What are your thoughts? Well, Roy, to tell you the truth, at 1,000 yard shooting and in, I don't mess with spin drift. I just don't worry about it. At 1,000 yards and beyond, when we're shooting extreme long range systems like 338 or 50 caliber, then I'll go ahead and turn spindrift on in my calculator and I'll let the calculator do the work. But I don't go outside of my comfort zone trying to calculate spindrift. I let the ballistic computer take care of it and then roll with it from there. In most cases, my ability to dope the wind is going to be the deciding factor, not if I dial on spindrift or not. However, it gives you a tiny extra bit of accuracy at extreme long range distances, so might as well use it and dial that error out. Rick asks, John, what is the best bullet design to get out to 1,000 yards? I'm just loading up some Sierra 175 grain hollow point boat tail match for my next 900 to 1,000 yards. Thanks for the great shows, Rick. Well, Rick, basically what you need to do is you need to go into a ballistic calculator. You need to punch in your bullet and your muzzle velocity. You need to see where that bullet is going to go transonic. You want it to go transonic beyond what your target distance is. The 175 grain Match King is a great start. Generally, they are fairly stable when they go transonic, so they still fly through point forward, but you still want that transonic distance to be on the far side of the target. And with pretty moderate loads in 308, 175 will make it out there to 1,000 yards and still be supersonic down at sea level. Now, as you get in higher elevations, you can squeeze a little bit more distance out of it because the atmosphere isn't quite as dense. So stick with that 175 until you get a hang on how to experiment with different bullets and see how they're going to perform. Jeremy asks, tips to overcome eye fatigue, please. Well, Jeremy, I've spent a lot of time with my eyeball glued to the back of magnified observation devices, be it a rifle scope, binocular, spotting scope, what have you. And the only way I've found to help alleviate eye fatigue is don't stay on the scope for too long. Take little breaks, come off the scope. If you're on the rifle and you're actually staring through the magnified optic, then when you don't actually have to be on target staring through the optic, take a break, focus on something else, look to the side, look down at the ground, just let your eyes relax. One of the issues that we run into is magnified optics are designed to transmit as much light as possible through. If you're out on a very bright sunny day, then you're getting all of that extra glare focused through right on your retina. So coming off the scope can allow your eye to relax, can allow you to get a little bit of that detail back. It's kind of the same premise of coming in from a bright sunny day and walking into a dark room. Your eye relaxes, you can pick up more detail, you can see more things as it adjusts to the lighting conditions. So come off of it a little bit, relax, let your eye return to its normal state, and then come back on the scope when necessary. Really, the only thing for eye fatigue is just to allow your eye to relax. There's no way that I know of that you can really fix that. Finally, Bob asks, your thoughts on the possible benefits or lack thereof Meplat trimming 175 grain Sierra Match Kings to smack steel at range beyond 600 meters. Bob, if you're shooting steel, I wouldn't mess with Meplat trimming. Bench rest shooters will trim Meplats because they are looking for that last edge of accuracy and consistency, and they're really worried about the consistency thing. The thing is, when you trim Meplats, you are reducing the ballistic coefficient of your bullet. You're putting a big flat spot right on the nose, and wind doesn't like flowing over flat spots. So Meplat trimming is not going to help the ballistics of your round. What Meplat trimming does is if you have a bullet that may not have the most consistent Meplats, then that will uniform them between bullets. What a lot of guys have started doing instead of Meplat trimming is pointing. They'll get a pointing die and run the bullets into the pointing die, and that will squeeze that ballistic hollow point back down to a point. And that in turn uniforms them amongst those bullets, and that can actually increase your ballistic coefficient depending upon the type of tip you're starting out with. So I would suggest if you're going to go to that degree, that finite bit of fine tuning, then go with a pointing die instead of a Meplat trimmer. That's just my suggestion. I don't mess with any of it because it is another step in the reloading process. I can't speak today. It's another step in the reloading process, and it really takes time away from my end goal, which is shooting the rifle. So mess with it if you want, but I would recommend pointing over Meplat Trimming. Well, that's all we have for our show today. I hope I answered some good questions for you guys. And for those of you who sent in questions that we didn't answer, still thank you for participating. That does not mean that we won't get to your question at a later point. And again, feel free to submit it next week when we take questions again. So if you've liked the show, please give us that thumbs up. If you got questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below or send them to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you're a subscriber, thank you. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. And if you like the show, please don't forget to share it. Share it on the web forums, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, share it wherever you like. You don't have to ask me for permission. We need you to share our videos. It's how we help to expand our audience. You are our greatest ambassadors. So, for those of you that already share our videos out, thank you very much. And for everybody, get out and shoot. And for those of you that were wondering, this is a Cadex Strike 30 chassis. We just got this thing together the other day. We are getting ready to take it out to the field and try it out and see what we think about it. I have a good idea of how it's going to perform because this is the same chassis that was on the Drake & Associates Stalker Gen 2 that we reviewed not too long ago. This is the updated version. This is actually the Strike 30 Dual. And I'll tell you what that means later on when we actually do the review. Overall, it is a very detailed chassis. It has a ton of features, a ton of adjustability. All that, of course, does come at a cost. So it is not a cheap chassis. But as we go through the review, we'll point out some nifty features on it and let you guys decide if maybe it is something that you want to look at for your next precision rifle. So stay tuned for more footage of the Cadex Strike 30 as we go through our review in the coming weeks. Thanks.